Is this the worst Premier League season in history? That's the question I'm asking today. Welcome back to the channel for everyone. Thank you guys for coming along and joining me again for another come drive with me on my way home today. So my question that I was thinking about and what is kind of been circling around at the moment is this the worst Premier League season we've ever had? I think there's different points to look at here. I know Gary Neville gave a very passionate indictment of the game at the moment, and I thought I'd give my opinion, dissect it a little bit, see what he's trying to get at, and then try and come up with some rebuttals, basically. Obviously, a little overlook of the Premier League. The relegations teams are pretty much confirmed. Not confirmed, but it's pretty obvious who's going down. There's no jeopardy down there. The Premier League winners are basically all decided as well. There's no chance of Arsenal coming back, really. There's a big fight on for European places, and there's been a massive drop-off in at least the top two sides for the past two seasons. So, and then you've also got big clubs like Man United and Tottenham obviously languishing down in the bottom of the table. So yeah, we'll have a little look at it, and I'm going to say from the outset I don't necessarily agree with Gary Neville, to be honest, but yeah, we'll look into it. I think the relegated sides, it's felt like from about November time, I'd say, that they just don't have enough in them. I think Ipswich, maybe in November we thought maybe they could do it, and then they just had a stinky patch of form and they never managed to recover from it. Wolves always felt like when they had Cunha, it always felt like they're going to have too much for Ipswich, in terms of this run-in. Like, it just never felt like Ipswich had the upper hand at any point in the season. I think Leicester made a massive mistake letting Steve Cooper go. I think he was 16th when they let him go. I think that was a huge mistake. They tried to be this innovative, progressive side, and it backfired big time on them. And while they've played some decent stuff under Ruud van Nistelrooy, it hasn't worked out. There's a risk they took and it hasn't worked out. Normally they've gone down for it. We've got Southampton, who are arguably the worst Premier League side in history. I agree with it. I'm not gonna lie, I personally do agree with it. I remember at the start of the season, me and one of my mates were discussing Southampton, and he literally said Southampton could not win a game all season. Like, he was gonna put like a bet on it. And to be honest, after watching them for about 5 or 6 games, I literally went, you know, he's on something here. He's not got a bad shout. Obviously, they eventually did get a win. I think it might have come against, I don't know if it was Spurs, but they've got a win against someone. I cannot remember off the top of my head who. And the reason why I can't remember that is because I'm thinking, who the hell was lost Southampton? Like, the only team I could think that would do that would be either like a Leicester or Tottenham, because Tottenham seems to give all the relegated sides points. But they've just been so bad, and they've been so naive. They've been so naive. Like, we thought Kompany last season was a bit naive with Burnley. He changed up towards the end to try and survive. Southampton just, I understand they've got principles and styles of play, but tweak it a little bit for the Prem. You know, you've gone from being the big dogs in the Championship in terms of like size of your club and everything like that, and you're able to play that style of football. You cannot do that in the Prem. Like, it just doesn't correlate. It's just not how it works nowadays. The gulf in quality between the Championship and the Prem is getting wider and wider. So you've got to try and narrow it in other ways, like Luton did last season with the style of football. That's the way you can narrow the gap. If you're trying to beat, let's say, a Bournemouth or someone like that, playing like Man City do, but you don't have Man City players, it's not going to work. Like, the quality of player just isn't there to do that style of football. So I think teams are going to have to learn, and I think they will now. I think you've seen the past 2 seasons, the teams that have come up have all gone down. And now I think you're going to see next season, these teams that do come up, they're not going to be as naive, I don't think. And if they are, then it's not naivety, it's stupidity at that point. to put it bluntly. If you keep doing the same thing over and over and over again, it's called insanity. So if they don't learn, they're just being plain stupid at that point. That's how I see it. But I think you might see Burnley coming back up, and I think you're going to see Scott Parker playing a brand of football down there, which is very stingy in defence. They're going to have low blocks, and I think they're going to be very disciplined. I think people they get behind those sort of teams now, because we will understand that, like, you have to play this way. Like Stoke City and Tony Pulis right now would be getting a lot of love from people because of the way they play. Not necessarily from pundits, but from the fans. I think the way they used to play, they get a lot of admiration nowadays because it's different. Like, it didn't give in to these new values and new principles that come along. And while it can make for an entertaining game at times, if everyone plays the same way, it's just boring. Like, there's no variation in the game anymore. So this is why I do agree with Gary Neville in this sense. Like, the game has become so turgid with positional play. But I must say, positional play is on its way out. And I think that's what has caused this season to be so cutthroat in terms of Man City falling off and Arsenal falling off. Positional play is dying. So teams now aren't scared to go man-to-man against these teams. And you look at like a Bournemouth or a Brighton who press really high, and they've got joy against these big sides because when they go in positional play, there's always like occupying these areas of the pitch when you have the ball. If they go man-to-man, they win the ball. In transition, they're quicker than these other sides because they've got more technical players, probably less physically capable players. So they've suffered on transition football, and players that can dribblers, players that can beat their man. So you look at maybe a Morgan Rogers at Aston Villa. I always bring him up in this conversation because he's a ball carrier. You know, he's that's pure and simple. He's a ball carrier. He's strong on the ball. He can carry it through the midfield, and you're going to need players like that going forward, I think. So it's been great to see those sort of players coming back into the Premier League now, and it's what undoes positional football, because if they can beat their man, they're taking one or two players out of the game straight away. So they're going to have to rethink these tactics next season, Guardiola and Arteta. They can't come into it with positional play and just positional play. You have to have a plan B, like Slot has plan B, plan C. Doesn't always use the same style of football. And you have seen it a little bit with Guardiola this season with the Ederson long ball. You know, he's got, I think, 4 assists now it is. So you are starting to see it a little bit develop. So I think there's been worse seasons than this, I think, in that sense, with Man City, for example, running away with the league. People might say, oh, but they were playing brilliant like back then. I'm like, yes, but the actual league itself was very boring. People forget City were winning the league by 20 points or whatever. Like, it was no competition. I know this season Liverpool technically ran away with the league, but my point is, everyone was trying to play the Man City style of football back then as well. This season you've seen teams come away from the Man City style of football and have success with it, and it's been refreshing to see. My point was that I think you'll see the promoted sides from the Championship now, learning from these past 2 years, tweaking tactics before the season starts, being a bit more dogged, a bit more defensive. You know, I think they're going to have to realise they're not going to outscore teams in the Premier League. They're going to have to be stingy at the back, first of all. I look at like an Ipswich. Their defence has been leaking all over the place. And they came into the season, obviously, I don't want to go too much into Ipswich because, to be fair to Ipswich, they've come up with a lot of players from League One, basically. So I think their most experienced player at the start of the season was like Ben Johnson from West Ham, and he was very much a bit part player at West Ham as a youngster. So looking at Ipswich is kind of an unfair example. I think McKenna's actually done really well with that squad, considering it's not a Premier League level. I look at like a Leicester and I think Steve Cooper could have got more out of this team. I just look at it and I go, he could have got more. He might not have kept them up, don't get me wrong, he might not have kept them up, but he could have got more out of them. And you you look at players like Mavididi who weren't playing under Cooper, and you're like, he was so good for them last year. Why he's not playing now? And then you think, now we look back and like, maybe providing more defensive stability for them. Maybe there was more graft in those players, and these teams down there can only afford really one or two talisman. They need workers down there really, and to say otherwise is, I think, naive now, and I think it showed. But yeah, I think we've got the worst Premier League side we've ever seen, which says a lot because Derby were awful back then as well. But I think the reason they're the worst Premier League side for me, not necessarily in terms of quality, but in terms of the way they approach the season. Like, they just came up thinking that they'll get the same results with the same style of play. It's like, no, but it was so infuriating to watch. I think the game I remember that sticks in my head so clearly is the Liverpool-Southampton game. So Southampton are at home against Liverpool, right? I think it might have been 2-0 or 2-1 or whatever they were winning. And they gave away 2 goals, I think, just from playing at the back. I think one was literally, Southampton had the ball on their like byline, their own byline, and he tried passing it out, and PK to the edge of the box, I'm pretty sure, and there's a Liverpool player there who scored. And it's just like, just that game, in the game management, the game intelligence, just to think, nah, cool, we can go long here. We have to sometimes go long. You can still play decent football. Like, you don't have to have big goal every second, but have it in your locker. You know, have that style of play in your locker. That's just, yeah, I get very annoyed and very frustrated with Southampton, and just teams in general thinking they can play this Spanish style of football with players that aren't capable of doing it, or teams that aren't capable of doing it, or managers that aren't capable of doing it even. Yeah, it gets me worked up. But that's the relegated sides. I think I would have to agree with Neville in a sense, in terms of just the style of play and the quality of the team just hasn't been there. Again, I think Ipswich have overachieved a little bit. But I look at Leicester, I look at Southampton, I go, yeah, you've just not done yourself any justice this season. And then we look at, sorry, then 1 sec. Yeah, and then we look at obviously the Premier League race, the title, and it's probably the least eventful title race we've had in a few years. It's not been a 2-horse race this year. I don't think it was ever a 2-horse race after about October, November time. Chelsea had a little flirt with it at one point and then backed off. Arsenal just never showed any consistency to do it. I think every time Liverpool dropped points and Arsenal were like, oh yeah, we take advantage, we just never did. We just never took advantage of that situation, so we were never in it for me. And it's just really annoying that. I think a few teams could have competed this season for that title, with Man City falling off. You could have seen a Chelsea going a bit more for it. Newcastle had a really slow start to the season, and they picked up form after November, and they went on like an outrageous run. I know it's outlandish to say, and it's probably a bit stupid maybe, but if Newcastle hadn't had such a slow start to the season, they weren't 10th after like 10 games, you never know. Like, but the form of the top sides just hasn't been there this season, and Liverpool haven't been. They were spectacular for the first like 4 or 5 months, but since then they've been like, they've had off days, they've dropped points, they've drawn games. Like, they haven't been the ultimate consistent champion. Like, they're going to win it on about, I think they're going to win it on about high 80s, which is going to be the lowest points total we've seen for a good few years. Which is what I mean, it's just the quality just hasn't quite been there for the title race, and there hasn't been a title race, which is really frustrating. And because every time you thought, oh, maybe they'll make it interesting here, nah. But one thing I do have to say about the title race is that Mo Salah has been a difference between everyone, basically. I think Mo Salah has brought this title for Liverpool, basically. Without him, they would be 5th, 6th, 7th, like, they would be nowhere near this title. So I think we have seen a pretty much all-timer season from Mo Salah at the same time. So while it's not been spectacular, the title win, I think the player of the year has been spectacular, and the standard he has set is up there with like a Thierry Henry season, or Kevin De Bruyne in his prime, or Wayne Rooney. Like it's up to that level what we've seen from Salah this season. So I hope people don't forget that in seasons going forwards. I just think I think he's been absolutely outstanding, and he needs to get his flowers. So whether or not he can maintain that for next year, we'll find out. But like I said, I think he's had an all-timer season, and fair play to him. You know, fair play to Liverpool in general. They've put Arsenal to the sword this season in terms of any sort of title race. Arsenal kind of put themselves to the sword, but Liverpool did what they needed to do at every single point in the season, basically. If they needed to win, they won the game. If Arsenal won, they won. The difference was when Liverpool dropped points after they played the game before Arsenal didn't capitalise on it. So, again, that's probably another point to Neville there, where you look at it and go, yeah, it's been poor. But, as I've said, we've had worse seasons in terms of titles as well. I think of Man City Centurion's year when they won it by 20 points or something. You look at Liverpool's COVID season when they won it by an unprecedented amount. I think it's the earliest title win in history. So that there are instances where the title has been won a lot more, even more comfortably than it has this season. I think that the potential difference is that it's just never felt like anyone else can compete for the title. We all thought Arsenal. Well, I don't think we all thought. Everyone either had Man City or Arsenal as their champions for this season, and neither team showed up really this year. That's the big letdown. So yeah, I think that's been the big frustration. I feel like that's more frustration for me this season than the relegated sides, because when the relegated sides came up, I looked at them and I went, yeah, you're going back down. So like, my expectations weren't there for them. I thought they'd go back down. Whether with the title race, I looked at them and went, could be really interesting this season. You don't know what's going to happen with Liverpool. They could be good. And then you were like, Arsenal and City are going to compete again, so it could be a really entertaining title race again. And that's been the biggest letdown over the relegated sides. It's the difference between the expectation and the reality in that title race. It hasn't lived up to the billing. Yeah. But then we get into something which hasn't happened in a lot of seasons now. I can't remember a season where there's been so few points between the middle of the table and European spots. So it might have started. I think the gap's starting to widen a little bit now. But at one point, it was 5 points between 10th and 4th, with about, I think it was 10 games to go. There were 5 points between them. So yeah, it's going to be. That's the part of the season where I look at the end of the season and go, it's going to be really interesting, this part, because they're so competitive for Champions League football now. Like, you've gone from having a big 4, a big 6 to like 2 that are basically confirmed to get Champions League football. I think Arsenal and Liverpool. Obviously Liverpool, Arsenal I think all but confirmed to get Champions League football. And then you've got like Forest, Chelsea, City, Villa, Newcastle, even Brighton are in there. I think Bournemouth have fallen off a bit too far now. And then you've got Fulham as well. Fulham aren't a mile away, but let's take Fulham away. Let's keep Brighton in there. That's 6 teams competing for 2 places. 3 if we're getting top 5, which we should be getting now. So only half of these teams can get them. So you're potentially you could see Chelsea and Man City out of Champions League football next season. You could see Newcastle, Villa and Forest in, which is actually my 3 to go in, which is, I think that's I would love that. I think I'd just love to see that. Maybe I love to see different teams in the Champions League. I don't want to see City in it every year. Chelsea obviously haven't been in it for now for 3 seasons. But as an Arsenal fan, I don't really want Chelsea in it. You know, that's just me personally. But I think this is the most entertaining Premier League season for the middle of the pack teams, which you don't normally say. Normally, this is like where it's dead rubber for this part of the season. And I think this brings my point about I think the quality of the league has overall increased. Like if you took the average player in the Premier League over the past whatever decade or more, I think this is the highest level of player we've had in the Premier League. So you look at like Bournemouth, who are like, they're in a bad run of form right now. They're like 10th or 11th. But the quality of players they have, like they've bought Evan Nilsson off of Porto. Semenyo's linked to big clubs. Kirkez is linked to massive clubs. Højsa might be going to Real Madrid. Like, I've named you 4 players there that have played in, or are capable of playing Champions League football. I don't think that happens in other seasons. Even like a Brentford have got like Mbeumo, Wissa, Damsgaard. Like, you've got the level of player right now, I think, is going up and up and up. And the reason why I bring this up is because it makes, basically, you have to lose out somewhere in the Premier League. If something improves somewhere else in the league is dropping off. So let's say if the title race is really, really like tight at the top, you've probably got to drop off in the middle of the table, like 10th to 15th or something like that, you know, where teams just aren't picking up points, or the relegated sides are really struggling or something like that. But if you've got a really competitive relegation battle and like there's 6 teams involved in it, then they're probably taking a lot of points off of sides from 13th to 8th or whatever it is, you know. So I think this season what you're seeing is sides from, is a bigger group of teams who are taking points off each other. So teams based, let's say, I think about 11th, if we include like Brentford and stuff, 11th to about 11th to 3rd, that's 8 teams where they're all taking points off the relegated sides basically, and taking points off the sides below that, like like the Uniteds and West Hams and Tottenham, Wolves. They're all taking points off these guys. They're taking more points off relegated sides than before, and they're taking points off each other now. So you're seeing like Chelsea aren't beating Bournemouth twice like they might have done once upon a time. Man City aren't beating Brighton twice like they used to. You're seeing a lot more drop points in these sort of games, and obviously Arsenal got dragged into that as well, in terms of, that's why we've dropped more points, because the quality of team, like the quality of team in 10th place basically, like the average, the median for the league has gone up, and the top sides haven't gone up with that, if that makes sense. So that bracket that I was talking about, whatever, like if you take out Man City, Liverpool and Arsenal, let's say, the rest of that league has improved massively in the last few years, and they've improved on last season again. Whether the top sides of Arsenal, City, Liverpool haven't necessarily improved as much. Obviously there's less room to grow because you're already a better team. It's like saying everyone's improved 10%, right? If they're let's say they're rated 670 out of 100, Arsenal and, oh wait, is that right in my head? 10%. That doesn't work out in my head. That's not right in my head. Let's say everyone improves basically by the same number. So let's say they all get like a plus 10, right? If Arsenal get a plus 10 on their 80, it takes them to 90 or whatever. I'm basically scrap that what I've just said. The proportion that these teams have got better compared to the top sides is greater. Basically, they've taken their standards to a higher level. They've gone from 4-star teams to 4.5-star teams basically on FIFA, if you want to think of that. That's a better way of looking at it. They've all gone to 4.5-star teams basically. Whether Arsenal, City, Liverpool, they're already 5-star teams. They can't go to 5.5. So you can only go up very, very small amounts. So it's like Arsenal signing David Raya to take over from Ramsdale. It might not have made them incrementally better. It might not have made them absolute world beaters, but it made them slightly better, you know. Whether if let's say Chelsea bought David Raya, it makes them so much better than they are. You know, that's the kind of thing I'm trying to say. So I think that's something that I've really enjoyed actually this season, is seeing how competitive it is in that middle of the pack up to Nottingham Forest. You know, I think from 3rd to 11th, I look at the fixtures every week, I'm like, I don't know who's going to win. Like, it's so entertaining, that factor of it. And this is why I have to deviate from Gary Neville's opinion. I have to say, like, that's what's been so entertaining for me. I think I love seeing these games of like Brighton against Man City, or even Palace against Man City at the weekend. Like, I come into that game and thinking, Palace are in good form. They could upset City here. That's what I was thinking. And then obviously they go 2-0 up, and you're like, oh, maybe. And then City just go, nah, we're going back to what we used to do basically, and 5-2 bang. But you see other games where like Man City are beating Brighton 1-0, and then all of a sudden Brighton get 2 goals back to back, bang bang, 2-1. Like, I love that sort of, that competitiveness in the league, and it's something that leagues like the Bundesliga and La Liga have lacked in recent years, and obviously and the French league as well. I think you've seen it a bit in Serie A nowadays, where that fight for the top 4 has actually started to develop more in that league. And even the fight for the title, they're starting to heat it up in recent years. Even though now I think it's obviously pretty much a 2-horse race in Serie A, but my point still stands. I think that raises the overall level of the league. So if you put these sides in La Liga now, if you put like a Brighton, a Fulham, a Forest into La Liga, I think they're going to finish in the top 6, maybe. Like, they're going to push that top 4. So I think it translates. They might even push in, like, comfortably come in the top 5. I don't think that would be outrageous. What's this guy? Well, I don't know, that's not what he's done. Yeah, I just think that's been such an underrated value this season in the league, and I think people do gloss over that a little bit. You know, I've heard people say like, oh, these clubs nowadays, they don't have like the top players in their teams. I'm thinking, and Mbeumo would start for most Premier League sides. Probably wouldn't start over Saka, and he probably wouldn't start over Salah. Everywhere else, I think he probably starts. I might miss 1 or 2 out with these examples, but you know what I mean. And then you look at Bournemouth, like I said, Kirkes, Huijsen, Semenyo, Evan Nilsson. Then we hop over to like Brighton. You've got Joao Pedro, who's Brazil's number 9. Like, it's mental. And looking at like Yankuba Minter, who's a massive prospect, believer. Like, I don't agree with this thing that these clubs don't have their star men anymore. I think they're developing them. I think we went through a time where they didn't have them, but I think you're seeing them now with the access to the scouting they have. They're getting this power back and recruiting players really well now. So I think whether that middle of the pack fight or whatever is enough to justify not being the worst Premier League season is up to you. I personally have thoroughly enjoyed the season. I thoroughly enjoyed the style of football. I think it's improving from year on year, basically. I think we're seeing a lot less positional players, a lot less boring. You're seeing some more maverick players coming back into it. And even as an Arsenal fan, while I haven't enjoyed our season, I've enjoyed the season as a whole. And I think the Premier League is benefiting from a more competitive league. I think you're seeing it in Europe now. Arsenal dumping Real Madrid 3-0. Real Madrid are flying in their league currently, but they lost 3-0 to Arsenal. So but you could argue that maybe because it's so competitive that it's going to drop the overall standard of the top teams. I don't think so. I think now you're going to see top teams, they have to go and be smart. They can't just go and spend 100 million on every single player they buy. Like Man City are going to have to be cute with how they rebuild this side. Newcastle, they've got to make little signings now to develop further. And the thing is, like a Newcastle, their squad, I'd say that their starting 11, you could say, like their fully fit starting 11 for Newcastle could be a top 4 side. Their squad is not a top 4 side though, because you look at like I love Dan Burn, but he's not a top 4 defender. So there's definitely room for improvement in these sides, and you've got to look at it now. And these top sides have got to take the initiative back. So they've got to go, and maybe the way to do it is you go pinch the best players off of these middle sides, but it's not like it used to be. You can't just go and spend 50 mil on these best players because they don't necessarily want to sell to you. Like, if you go to Brighton and say, "I'll give us Belieber 50 mil," they'll go, "Jog on, give us 100 mil." Like, it's the same with Brentford. If you go Brentford, "Oh yeah, 40 mil from Mbeumo," they'll say, "You're having a laugh, give us 60 at least." Like, that's the power they have. They don't have to sell to you. Like, they don't have to do it. It doesn't affect them financially as much anymore because they've got more financial strength than other leagues do. So they can go out and buy other players from other leagues. They don't have to shop from your dead wood as well. Because a lot of times you used to see dead wood in the Premier League would go to let's say like a Sunderland back in the day or something like that, you know. You would see it happen a lot. Like, these clubs pick up all the dead wood from these teams. But now you see it go into like Italy or whatever because these clubs don't want it. Their scouting is better than that now. So the top clubs have to fix up. Teams like Chelsea have got to be smarter with their business. Arsenal have got to be cute. Arsenal have got to be braver with their business. City have got to be cute with their business. And Liverpool have just got to start. They've got to start looking towards the future, I think, with Liverpool. And then United have just got to do everything, basically. They've got to spend, they've got to be cute, they've got to fix, they've got to get rid of dead wood. They've got so much to do. We haven't even touched on that, basically. I haven't even touched on Forest and Bournemouth, or Bournemouth worth line, but Forest especially. Like, I've loved seeing them up there. It's almost like a Leicester sort of season. So, in my opinion, it's not the worst Premier League season ever. In terms of entertainment and like shocks and stuff like that, I think it's right up there, actually. In my personal opinion, you know, seeing Man City fall from their heights has been fantastic to watch. Arsenal not putting up a good fight after these last couple of years, it's probably been entertaining to watch. Liverpool producing the shock, Man United struggling, Spurs struggling. Like, I've really enjoyed seeing that. David Moyes back at Everton, I think that's a great story for the league. Bournemouth were flying. I think if Bournemouth had maintained it a little bit more, you'd have seen it flying. Fulham as well. Fair, like, props to them. Brighton, I think, is a great story for the league. Like, there's so many good stories this season, and there's so many entertaining stories. Not necessarily good stories for the clubs, but entertaining for us to watch play out. So I wholeheartedly disagree with Gary Neville about it being the worst Premier League season ever. I can see his point, but I think we should have expected the relegated teams to go down in the first place. I don't think we ever saw them staying up. I would have given Luton more of a chance than these guys this season, to be honest. But yeah, if you disagree with me, let me know down below. Let me know what you think is the worst Premier League season outside of this one, maybe, or let me know why you think this is the worst Premier League season. Thank you guys for coming along, and I will see you all in the next one. Peace.